Hey everybody, welcome to TV Chef Fantasy League. I am your host, Mike Cabell. I'm coming to you from Edinburgh, Scotland. Joining me are my co-hosts, Sierra Kato and Iffy Wadiway. This is part 2 of our series where we hear from Scott, Iffy's friend, who has auditioned for MasterChef twice. Iffy, you missed last week, and apparently we've got some follow-up already
Oh yeah.
from Scott
Oh yeah. Scott
to our
is
episode
a
last week.
is a listener. Scott is not someone just volunteering his story lackadaisically. Scott is a listener, wanted to better the pod with his great insights, so he was already ready, locked and
Wow.
loaded
Love
with
it, love
his
it.
responses to part 1, which I will read right now. Hey guys, thanks so much for including me in this whole MasterChef journey. It's been a hoot, and I've really been enjoying the podcast as a whole. Mike and Sierra had a few comments/questions that I wanted to answer or respond to. Distance. Oh yeah, it's pretty far. I lived in Marina Valley, just east of Riverside, and it
Oh,
was around 90 minutes to get to San Diego.
oh,
I did
Oof.
the San Diego audition because I think I was doing volunteer work or out of town during the LA audition. And to be
okay.
fair, when I did the LA audition a year later, it was an 80-minute drive to Beverly Hills.
Oh
So,
God.
yeah. So yeah, it's a hoof. And you definitely have to plan for a lot of things. They tell you that they don't expect food to be warm, and they tell you that if they think it's unsafe to eat it, they won't. But I do not envy the casting directors trying old food, and I hope their workers' comp covered GI infections.
Oh boy. I'm sure it does not.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
How many stops are there? I believe there's 5 to 8 cities picked for auditions. So it was a little like American Idol. You could enter videos if you couldn't make it in person, but it was pretty clear they were focusing more on the in-person stuff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Uh,
That's I feel like that's in line with regular Hollywood casting, where it's like if I get an audition in person, I'm like, all right, I've got a shot. If I'm sending in a self-tape, it's going right in the trash can. I know they're not watching it.
No, the void.
Cuisine. Mike, you're right. Everyone cooks everything, and you're right. I concede. Sierra's also right in that when the question is posed and all you think of yourself is me cook good, me want TV show, you're dead in your tracks
Oh
and a
no.
bit of scramble. And so in bold, he says, did Scott learn his lesson the second time around? Spoilers, not at all. I think I told I think I
Self-aware.
I think I told them I cooked comfort food, which isn't really a cuisine per se, but was at least a little closer to what they look for. They
Mhm.
ask you to describe what that cuisine is, so I think I made up some flowery BS that I thought sounded good, and I'm sure if I heard it now, I would think it was hot garbage. Riverside's culinary scene. I mean, like most California cities, there isn't a distinct cuisine, but it's a melting pot. Pretty good taquerias, pretty good gastropub stuff, and you need to know where to look. Oddly enough, Mike referenced Portland, where I'm actually originally from.
Oh,
Oh,
Ooh.
yes. Hotel room cooking
okay.
guy. I get so upset every time I see these. I just want you guys to know it shows up in my feed too. I work in safety and I travel a lot for work.
Oh
And every
God.
time I see it, I want to barf. My wife, thank you for applauding my wife. She appreciates it. She's a saint. And if he can probably elaborate on how impressive it is that she tolerates not only me, but all of my shenanigans, I can attest. And plating,
Cute.
yes, you're given X number of minutes to plate it and make it look fancy and edible. Some people bring a ton of food and pick the best of their stuff to plate. I personally had enough
Oh.
to make 2 meals, 2 stuffed chicken breasts, amount of potatoes, a lot of asparagus. I thought it was beans, it was asparagus. Whoops. How long ago? 2014, 10 years, 10 long years. The
Oh,
second
wow.
audition was in 2015. The pro-
Wow.
yeah. The process now, apparently, they don't do in person open casting anymore. You have to do everything via videos. It's all detailed on their audition site, but it's definitely a casting call more than a true cooking competition, which is totally fine if you know that going into it. I think after my first round, I realized it probably could have done more. I probably could have done more my second time. Second round, I'm gonna save all that. I don't want to spoil us listening to you, Scott. Did anyone from my audition get on TV? I honestly don't know, but they had cameras on some people, and there were quote unquote VIP auditions where select people were focused on a lot more. After digging through a million pictures to find out when the hell I actually auditioned for MasterChef, I remember that I actually had a blog post about the whole process 10 years ago. I'm surprised it's been that long. You can find more on my old shitty blog at averagecook.com. It's not shitty. I was supporting Average Cook before you were dunking on it on my podcast. It's a good pod, and I'm gonna find his tag. He's been doing it on Instagram now too, so check that out.
Okay.
I really liked our first meal together. Even though he unfortunately found out that he was talking up his cooking because we both volunteered together. And he's like, "Come over and cook. I'm gonna cook you whatever." And in the end, it was like a fried chicken and watermelon dish, and he was like, "Oh, I wasn't doing that on purpose." I was like, "I didn't realize it until you pointed it out, Scott."
Oh no.
Now
Could have said
I'm
nothing.
wondering. Yeah. You thought I wasn't gonna blast you on the pod?
Well,
yes.
Now he's going to need to respond to that. It's just going to be a back and forth all the way
yeah,
through the
exactly.
season.
Yeah, you're gonna have a whole dialogue with your friend Scott
Oh.
over our podcast.
Look, it's good. Actually, this is great. And this is pure podcast energy. Where at the end he goes, "If you mention that you read the old post, please don't point people to averagecook.com since it's pretty defunct and I pretty much just sit on it these days for nostalgia's sake. If you guys do want to see some of the things I've cooked in my past, my IG at Average Cook Official had 300 plus photos from my cooking adventures over the years and has taken a real nosedive in terms of content since I had kids a few years ago. Feel free to plug the IG, but I really don't care if you guys do or don't." Oh, so this was just a letter to us, not to be read on air. Too bad I did it, and not an excuse. I have a child, and I'm out here doing shows, podcasts. Get your ass in the kitchen, Scott. Let's see some new food. Put a plate.
Well, speaking of new stuff from Scott, we are now ready to dive into part 2 because last week Scott actually sent us 2 voice notes. This one will be detailing his second audition, which we now know was in 2015. Our wonderful producer Val has broken it up into a few clips. So Val, let's roll right into clip number 1.
So the second time that I tried out for MasterChef was a year or 2 later, and now that I'd gone through it once, I was like, all right, I kind of got the hang of this. I got to be Mr. Personality. I got to kind of take my eccentricities and ratchet them up to 13 or whatever. And so this one was in LA, so a little closer to home. And the dish that I made was salmon en croûte. And so for those of you who are unfamiliar, that's salmon, in this case, wrapped in a mushroom duxelle. I had asparagus in there. I think I had chev in there too. I was on a really big chev kick for a while. And then you'd place a salmon fillet on the whole thing, and then wrap it up with puff pastry and bake it. I served a cream sauce or something with it too, and it kind of was a little more professional, a little more, I don't know, wow somebody than the meat and potatoes that I had done the time before.
Okay. I will say, listening to the last episode, y'all guys are so sweet. I love y'all so much. Because y'all, you were ribbing Scott, but you were taking it easy. So I'm gonna take it from here. So after that weird fish dip story, Scott, your pick was to go with salmon. You did a whole story about this fish dip and how it funked up the place, and you're like, nah, baby, I'm gonna put some puff pastry on salmon, and that's what we bring in to the spot. I'm gonna make fishy fucking beef Wellington, and I'm gonna bust that out, which I do. That is, for
he's at a loss for words, folks.
Well, because for Gordon Ramsay, his big thing is beef Wellington, right? He's like, no one knows how to make a beef Wellington. So that to me, I'm like, okay, that's ballsy. So maybe you were like, I'm gonna try something spicy. I'm gonna take your favorite beef Wellington and I'm gonna put a fish in it.
Yeah, I do. I want to applaud Scott here because that is a high degree of difficulty as far as the cook goes. Like you said, it's a step up from just like meat and potatoes because you have to worry about not like, steaming your fish inside of the puff pastry, making sure everything's cooked to the right temperature, but they all cook at wildly different times and temperatures. So it's like, it's a ballsy dish for sure. And the fact that he went in going, I know what I did wrong last time, and I've got a plan now. I'm like, I'm on the edge of my seat. I'm like, he's gonna get cast on this show. That's a good idea.
I like that, maybe because when I heard salmon, again, same idea, like funky, 80 minutes to Beverly Hills. I don't think we're going to make it, but I think with the added puff pastry, if it's like all getting baked, I don't know anything about this, but if it's kind of like a unit that's encased, like I'm a little, maybe that's, it preserves it a little bit more, probably wrong, but, and then you keep it separate from the cream sauce and then put it together on the plating, so maybe I kind of felt less scared. It's not like an open fish.
Yeah, that's true.
Flapping in the wind.
That's true. It's you're right. You're right. I was being a little
but no, I mean, still bold. It could have been any other meat. But
it's nice to have someone here now who is close enough to Scott that he can just openly insult him to his face.
Sure.
Yeah. That's fine. All right, Val, let's hear clip number 2.
This time they talked with us a lot more about like the process and what went into it. And I think when you have kind of a technical element of a dish, they want to dig into it to make sure that you're not, some lying asshole who just bought it out of a restaurant and plated it, whatever. So for me, like I said, it's wrapped in puff pastry, and puff pastry is, not particularly easy to throw together. I mean, even Gordon Ramsay himself on a bunch of stuff, as I've seen him say in a video, like, just go buy this out of the freezer section. It's not worth your time. And so they're talking to me and they're like, okay, so tell me about your puff pastry. And what I wanted to say was, well, I went to the freezer section and there Pepperidge Farm was, and I basked in its bounty. But what I did say was, I walked him through how you make puff pastry. I'm like, well, you take your butter and you take your flour and your other ingredients and you mix them together and you layer them and you do an envelope fold and then you roll it out and you do another envelope fold and you roll it out. And between each one, you're chilling it to make sure that your butter doesn't melt too much and blah, 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 blah. And they're like, wow, I can't believe you made your own puff pastry. And you kind of have to like grin and bear it and just kind of lie through your teeth and be like, oh yeah, I totally made that myself. So yeah, sometimes you take a shortcut and you lie about it. I don't know. They seem clearly not fooled enough for me to move on and be on TV. But it was at least a good conversation.
Ooh.
Wow. Spicy.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So he didn't get cast because he lied. I feel betrayed as an audience member because I'm like, oh, you lied. I feel like it'd be very easy to look at store-bought puff pastry, which is like robotically consistent, and be like, that's clearly not homemade, because homemade puff pastry usually for most home cooks like doesn't look perfect. It's puff pastry. It like checks the boxes of puff pastry, but it's so hard to do perfectly. And so when you pull it out of the freezer, it's like, yeah, this is clearly a better product because it was made in a factory. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I feel like no, you had the right thought where it's like, I'm trying to develop a better story. I'm trying to make it more exciting. So I'm gonna make myself a more exciting cook. So that I'm not beefing too much about.
Sure. It is. I wonder, now that he brings it up, I didn't even cross my mind that people might go to a restaurant and then drive it to the audition. It reminds me of like in Mrs. Doubtfire when like Robin Williams like gets delivery and then like puts it on the plate like they're like, oh my God, it's homemade. But anyway, it's so I'm sure that happens. I mean, and then that's crazy. But I mean, I guess you have to like, I get why he felt like he probably has to go the full homemade thing. I wonder if there is like immediate elimination if they used anything like in the way that we would be like, oh, anything prepackaged in Top Chef, docked to a point.
Yeah.
Or where they draw the line there. Because obviously, some things like are gonna be just packaged and ready to go, ingredients wise, and nobody's like going and crushing up their spices. So I don't know how far you take it, but yeah, interesting.
All right. Let's hear clip number 3.
You guys have talked about, taking a culture's food and bastardizing it or changing it or whatever. And everyone tries to be creative. There's that whole like, everyone's so creative. The guy next to me, when we were in there plating, was making, it was a gefilte fish, and he, everything was cubes. So he had somehow made like a gefilte fish jelly that was cubed up.
Oh,
It looked like
Oh
a
no.
bastardized Jello salad.
Oh
And then he
God.
had taken, I can't remember if it's cranberry or what's traditionally put with it, but it's some red sauce that was also cubed up into smaller cubes, and it looked like he was playing with Legos or something, trying to build a fish dinner. Just like in my last story with Crazy Brussels Sprout Lady, he's like, "Man, you got to try this," and I was like, "Nah, I'm good. Like, I am totally fine. I do not need to try that." And as it's wafting up, and again, everybody's room temperature food, uh, yeah, I was good.
Oh my
wow.
God.
Okay. I okay. I think every culture has like a food where even its own people are like, we're okay. You know what I mean? Like I'm Filipino, and we have something called balut, which is a fertilized duck egg, and it's
Oh
like
yeah,
old men
tastes
use
so
it as
good.
like drinking food, and it's
Wow.
yeah. Look,
Oh,
setting
I'll be
aside matters
slurping
of
on
taste,
that
most people
thing.
have a hard time stomaching
Yeah, I'll
it.
be slurping
You're
on that
just like
thing. I'm
glugging
not
down those
afraid.
blue.
But it's like there's a lot of Filipinos even who are like, it's pretty
Sure.
gross. You don't have to eat it. You know what I mean? And I feel like gefilte fish is the balut of the Jewish people, where like even a bunch of Jews are like, we could pass on the gefilte fish. So to take a food so divisive and then turn it into such a mortifying idea of it, to turn fish into Jello is
Oh
like,
no, no,
Yeah,
no.
whoa,
That
like there's
immediately.
like 10 steps of no thanks here.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You really took the no thanks to another level.
Just the Lego, like picturing him also just like using his hands to just move these cubes, jelly cubes around. Hell no. And yeah, anything with the jello. I mean, I've come across, I've mentioned this before, I believe, either on or off air with you guys, but I had jellied eels when in
Right.
London. And, that isn't necessarily like the jelly is not fish, but because it's adjacent to the eels, which are basically fish tasting things, it just is like jelly, fish jelly again. And I just don't think it's the best, because normally when you're eating fish, if you come across a jelly like texture, it's like bad news. Yeah, you're not
Yeah.
getting the good part. So can't imagine. But yeah, yeah, creativity. I guess that guy really took that and ran with it, and it kind of, I guess, could be that gastro, what's that, gastronomy fun times, whatever that's
Oh,
called.
molecular
Oh yeah,
molecular
yeah,
gastronomy.
great. Yes, that
But I
too.
like gastronomy
But
fun
gastronomy fun
times.
times, one of the above. But yeah, molecular gastronomy, like that. It sounds like that guy really is a fan of like Wiley Dufresne or whoever, and wanted to
Yes.
make their own version. And hey, it's step one on a long journey.
Yeah, and that was surprise twist. That man at the audition was Wiley Dufresne. That
Oh
man's name
wow,
was
that's
Wiley
where he
Dufresne.
started. Oh my god.
That's how he got his
Well, look,
start, auditioning for
eating
MasterChef.
my words. Yeah, there we go.
All right, let's hear our final clip here from Scott.
As they go around, they're watching you do your prep, so they're seeing, if you know what you're doing. One of the things I thought was funny was I was chopping up, I think, some chives or something like that, making my sauce and topping the thing with chives, and the casting director comes around and they're like, "Nice knife skills, number 485," or whatever number I was. And I remember, thanking the guy, but also kind of chuckling to myself, because at this point I think I had cut my fingertips off probably 2 different times at home. And not enough to like scar me for life, but you can tell that something's been missing at some point. And then I think a few weeks after this, I cut another fingertip off. So I wouldn't say my knife skills are that great, but it's funny, again, you're trying to present a version of yourself, and they don't know your past, and you're not going to go into it being like, well, let me tell you, I can make a badass meatball sub, but you're going to end up with a thumb in it. Um, but yeah, everybody's food is super weird and cold. And God bless those casting directors who are having to eat everything. They said they really liked my salmon en croûte. They were impressed, I guess, with the technicality of it, but again, didn't get called. on to the next stage. You know, they ask you questions about, you know, how competitive are you? You know, could you play the villain? You know, do you think you can be Sly? And like, I don't know. Part of me wanted to be on TV, and part of me didn't want to play those parts because that's just not who I am. But it was fun. You know, it was a good experience. I haven't tried out again since. I've since moved to Fort Worth, and I know Dallas usually has a tryout. But I've now got some kids at home. I travel for work, so I've got a different job that's hard to leave for 6 weeks at a time. But it's a pretty cool experience. I don't know. I would maybe consider trying out again. But those are kind of probably the big takeaways from the first two times that I ever tried out.
Mhm.
I think that Scott's got a compelling narrative to audition again, because
Oh,
frequently what we see is the contestant who, like, you know, spent X amount of years raising their kids, and now they're ready to do something for them. And then we love a comeback story. We love I auditioned for this 10 years ago. And we also love someone who set aside something to be on this show. So to say, like, hey, I had to take off work to be on this show. You know, like we always get people who are like, I quit my job to be on the show or whatever. Or like Kamei set aside her honeymoon. It was Kamei,
Oh
right? Someone set
gosh.
aside their
Yeah,
honeymoon to be
yeah,
on
I
this
think
current
so.
season. So Scott, I'm rooting for you to get back in there.
yeah, yeah. I mean, look, I'm glad I have more support behind what I've been telling Scott a long time, where it's like, get back in there. I think that Scott, you know, is very funny, has a very bubbly personality. I think that it is like, you know, Hollywood brain makes me think it is something that eventually they're like, yeah, that was great. Like I imagine even seeing Scott, you know, on this millennials, you know, season, he has such a like old school soul where it's like, oh, it'd be funny because he's like melding the different generations. Look, keep it going. And based on the stuff that we've seen and based on the food that I've eaten by you, you definitely qualify.
I think, well, you know, he's got uh people rooting for him, obviously, hopefully more after this. I've been kind of watching The Bachelorette, and
Hmm.
I've watched it before, and one of my main things with that show and any show like this reality, it's like I kind of wish I could be like a third part or a independently hired like coach for them to give them advice like as they're going along, like
Oh,
do this, like do that, right? Not a producer on the side of the reality show, but like just like their private coach. So I do
yeah.
feel like, you know, if Scott just gets together like a brainstorming sesh of a few you know, comedian friends, people who do reality TV, whatever, get us all in a room, we'll come up with like a little identity. You know, it might not be Scott truly, but like, you know, we'll incorporate the kids, like what you're saying, Mike, what you're saying, Iffy, and package it up, you know, get that average. You've already got the branding with average chef. What is not your average chef? Whatever the branding is on that, we'll work on that. But you know, I think just like you already have that blog that exists and the social media presence. I think that's what you got to do. Go for the gold, you know?
Yeah, in these Olympic times, what you got to do is go for the gold.
Go for the gold. Be the Biles of MasterChef.
Yes.
All right. Well, these have been recordings from someone who auditioned for the show 10 years ago. Next week, hopefully, we will be hearing from someone who has been on the show more recently than 10 years ago. But that is all I will say for now. Hey, before we go, if you like our show, head to MaximumFun.org/join to support us directly. If you want to get in touch with us, you can send us an email at chef@MaximumFun.org or DM us on Instagram at TV Chef Fantasy if you've also auditioned or been on the show. And again, hopefully we'll hear from someone with more experience next week. Guys, got anything else to say before we go?
No, no.
All right. Thanks so
MasterChef
much,
soon.
everyone. Yeah. We'll be back with hopefully more MasterChef once MasterChef is back on the air after the Olympics. In the meantime, enjoy the Olympics. TV Chef Fantasy League is a Maximum Fun production. Our producer is Valerie Moffat. Our theme song is by Dylan Van Auken. Follow us on Instagram and YouTube at TV Chef Fantasy League.